So we've talked about objects, and objects are a way to store data, and it's a way to make something very detailed. So for example, if I want to create an object for a person, I can get really detailed with this object. I can give them a first name, I can give them a last name, I can give them an age if I wanted to. I could get really specific about this object. I could create all of these details and store them nicely encapsulated in this, the name of the object, person. And we know if I wanted to access any of these properties and get their values, I would use dot notation. So, oops. My object is person, and I could grab their first name just like that. So if I do that, up in the console, we see their first name. Arrays are another way to store data, another efficient way to store data. So objects let you turn something, let you get really detailed about a particular thing. Arrays let you store a lot of data about one specific thing. So with objects, once again, you can get really detailed and really describe whatever the object you're trying to create. Arrays, on the other hand, is a way to store data where you have a lot of information about just one specific detail. So let's say I'm Power School or something, and I'm trying to keep track of a student's test scores throughout the year. So I can create the array, much like I would create a variable or an object, using my let keyword. I'll give my array a name, just like we have before. So I'll call it test scores. A better name would be test scores with capital S in the middle. And then instead of using a pair of braces or squiggly brackets, I'm going to use a pair of square brackets. That's how JavaScript knows I'm creating an array. And I could just start throwing numbers for these test scores for this student. So let's say they got an 80. And the second test score, they got a 70, and then 85, and then a 90, and then they really bit the dust with a 65, maybe a 50. Well, let's do one more. Let's clean it up with an 80. So I've created an array with the name test scores, and here's all of the data inside it. So you can see we can get really detailed about one specific thing, this student's test scores. So I can't really put anything else in this data containing object, this array. All I can throw in is test scores. So I can store a lot of information about something very specific. So the question is, well, how do I access this data now? Because when we were talking about objects, I access them through dot notation. I would use the name of the object, and then I would dot the property I was interested in, and it would spit out the value. These are just numbers, or these are just values. There's no defining, they don't have any property names. They're just numbers. So you access them through what are called indexes. So the very first elements would be at index. Let me write this better. Your very first element has an index of 0. The next one has an index of 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 5, and 6. So they're labeled. Your first number starts at 0. Your second element, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. The only weird thing is it starts at 0, and if you've never programmed before, that might throw you off. But if you have programmed before, that makes sense. So if I wanted to access the 5th test score, maybe they did their Unit 5 test, it's sitting at index 4. So what I could do is I could use the name of my array and then a pair of square brackets and which index I'm interested in. Well, if I want to spit out 65, I'm going to index 4. So I'm going to put a big 4 right there. And I get 65 right in my console. If I wanted to access the first element, that would be this one. I could use my index of 0. And there we see, we get 80 coming out of the console. I could change this index. Maybe this 90 was wrong. Maybe he freaking cheated and I'm going to give him a 0 now. So I want to replace this test score with a mark of 0, an element of 0. Well, I could go test scores. I'm interested in the third index, which is currently 90. However, I'm going to set it equal to 0. And now if I spit out that third index value, I shouldn't see 90 because I've changed it to 0. And sure enough, it's 0 right there. Let's say we've got Unit 8 coming up, and I got to put in another test score. Well, it looks like I've only got room for these 7 elements. Nope. I could add in one if I wanted to. So even though there's no index 7 over here, it looks like the array is done. I could create a 7th index, and I could give it a value of, let's do a weird number. Let's do 99. And if you don't believe me, I will spit out that 7th index element to the console, and we have 99. You can also display the entire array if you want, and you will get a nice, lovely display of your array as it is. And the last thing I will show you is I did create a 7th. Let's take that 7th index away for a second. What if I tried to create an element at the 14th index, which means I skipped over these 6, 7 indices? Can you do that? JavaScript, you can. JavaScript arrays are flexible, which means you can add to them, you can shrink them, you can make them bigger, you can do whatever you want to them, and it will find a way to accommodate. So let's say at this 14th index, I'm going to set a value to 100. So even though I skipped over all these 7 indexes, I will create an array with 7 empty slots, but my 100th value is still at the end. So you can see that console log is a very useful command to use so you can see what's going on in your array, and it'll tell you the elements. So that is a very basic introduction to arrays and how you can store lots of data in, once again, one little single place, one little access point.